You're very welcome to a special broadcast celebrating the Charlie Chaplin Comedy Film Festival online event. And I'm delighted to say now we have a very special guest for you. We have Kate Guyonvarch, who's the director of the Chaplin office, and we're going to find all about her and what the office does, so I'm very looking forward to it. Kate, you're very welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see you and to be here.
Yeah, I think it was 2011 since we last seen each other anyway, and you were in Waterville. That was a memorable weekend.
That was a fun weekend, wasn't it? Yeah. It was my first time in Ireland as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what did you make of it? Did you enjoy yourself?
It rains a lot.
Yeah, but we had the crack anyway. We had the fun anyway. Kate, tell us, what is your role within the Chaplin office first, and what goes on at the Chaplin office?
Well, we have different companies. One company called Roy Export that owns the films that Chaplin made when he set up his studios in 1918 onwards. And so the company owns not only the films, but the photographs and the archives and everything related to the films, the music, etc. And we have another company called Bubbles Inc. that owns, to which Chaplin assigned the rights to his name and image for merchandising purposes. And so, you know, if you want to put Chaplin on a t-shirt, or, I mean, as the Comedy Festival has a license with Bubbles in order to use the image for promoting the festival and for the merchandising products that you do.
Mm. He was kind of ahead of his time, that he was clued into that at that time, wasn't he?
Well, no, the merchandising company was only actually set up in the 70s.
Okay.
When the films were about to be re-released in all over the world, and it was right at the beginning of merchandising, before Pokemon or anything. I mean, there was hardly any, and so it was quite a good idea in the 70s. There was quite a lot of licenses were signed, and it was the company was quite busy. But then, you know, the more merchandising that came into the world, the more the less the Chaplin image as a merchandising product was important. But there was always merchandising from 1916 onwards. People made dolls, and the one I like best is a transfer for hard-boiled eggs for Easter. His face, you know, they actually we have in the archives the transfer that you can put on an egg, but they weren't licensed.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't. I mean, they did for a year. His brother tried to set up a merchandising licensing company, but it was just too complicated. And I don't think Charlie was interested in it either, really.
And what kind of products has his image been used on over the years?
Oh, goodness me. I think anything you can think of, probably.
Yeah.
You know, socks, shoes, slippers, stockings, underpants, swimsuits, notebooks, pencils, pens, telephones, calendars. You know, stationery is the obvious one, but I mean, just over the years, the alarm clocks. Even we once had a license for those pachinko machines in Japan. You know, those machines that people like pinball, but that they play in Japan, where they have halls and halls of them, and they're kind of slightly gambling. But I don't think you earn money; you just earn points.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, anything you say, probably yes.
Yeah. But I suppose you have to be very protective of the brand, then, of the Chaplin image in that front. You know, being careful who does use it.
You have to be careful, but I work under, I mean, me and Arnold, my assistant, we work under instructions from the family. So when someone asks us for a license now, we ask them if they agree when it's for a product. And so sometimes the result is surprising. I would expect them to say no, and the majority is a yes, just because they think, hey, that's cool, or that'd be funny, or and it's not usually about money either. We had a request recently from some French people to open a cafe, bar, restaurant in the country somewhere in France, and they don't have very much money. And so, I mean, I told them what I thought would be a reasonable fee, and they said, oh no, we couldn't possibly do that. And I said, well, what can you afford? And they said, well, this much. And I said, well, I'll ask the family. And the family said yes.
Oh.
So, you know, it depends on all sorts of things, really.
Tell us about your own, connection with Chaplin. When did he first come across your radar? When did the love affair begin?
Well, do you know, I don't have any recollection of Chaplin in my childhood at all.
Really?
Really. My parents weren't particularly into film, and so I suppose, I remember going to see Oliver. I think that was the first film that really, really, the musical that really sort of hit me. I adored it. And we didn't really watch films together on television or anything. And so years and years and years ago, in 1982, when I came to Paris and I was looking for a job, and I put my CV in the British Chamber of Commerce, I got a call from Pam Pommier, who was at the time the assistant in the office, saying, we work for the Chaplin family. And I had absolutely no idea who she was talking about. I thought, oh, they must be some really rich people like the Rothschilds or something like that, and I thought I just needed a job. So I went for the interview, and I suddenly realized it was Charlie Chaplin. And I'd heard of him, obviously, but I didn't know anything about him, I'm afraid. But now I know lots.
And, just speaking about, what the paraphernalia that's in the office or things you've come across, you must have come across some interesting, not artifacts, but, materials of his works down through the years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm particularly passionate about the archives, which are online. If you want to look, charliechaplinarchive.org. The archives were scanned by the Bologna in Italy, the Bologna Cinematheque, and they are just all the papers that were kept by the people who worked at the Chaplin studios from 1918 onwards. And so, I mean, like I said, there's this Easter egg transfer, and there are contracts and letters that they received, and draft letters, and I mean, Chaplin himself wasn't a great letter writer, but it's just, to me, absolutely fascinating. And there are also all the notes, the preparation notes for screenplays and things like Modern Times, Great Dictator, lots and lots of notes, which are just amazing to read. I've been working on The Great Dictator this year for an exhibition that was supposed to be happening at the Arles photo. There's a huge photo festival in Arles in France every summer, and obviously it was cancelled, and they have, like 30 exhibitions, and we were going to do this great exhibition about Chaplin, because we bought some new photos from the granddaughter of someone who was on the set. So I've been looking at The Great Dictator a lot, and it was just amazing to read all the different versions of the scripts, pages and pages, hundreds of pages of storylines that were never used. And to think, oh my God, they could have had that. And there was a chimpanzee. There's actually a photograph. I can send you the photograph. There's a photograph of Chaplin holding a chimpanzee. And if you find the pages in the script where the chimpanzee was, I don't know if you know The Great Dictator, but it's a parody of Hitler. Mm-hmm. And Chaplin plays two roles: Hinkle, who is Hitler, and a Jewish barber. And Hinkle in the film doesn't have a wife, but in early stages of the script, he did have a wife, and her pet was this chimpanzee. And there's just amazing story of how the chimpanzee was trained to do the sort of Nazi salute and hand out sweeties when people came to visit and things. And then one day, Hinkle's doing a piano concert, and he and Bobo, the chimpanzee's name, goes to the aquarium and starts getting lobsters and fish and things and putting them on people's laps and kind of giving them to all the guests. And there's just so many gags that you think, oh, wouldn't that have been great? Yeah. But it didn't fit. So to me, that's my passion, the archives.
Yeah. And it's just interesting, and we've mentioned this in previous interviews that I've done on Chaplin, but The Great Dictator, every year it seems to be more relevant than the next. It's amazing, and then it's played a lot now. It's going viral again. You see it, every few months it comes. And like this crisis we're in, the last economic crash, it was being played a lot. It seems to be relevant all the time.
Well, isn't that sad? I mean, yes, it is. And the speech is the final speech is, people seem to now reduce the film to the final speech, which is a shame, because it's got so much more in it. But yeah, the speech is just everybody. I mean, we licensed it to Coldplay, we licensed it to U2. We've licensed it to lots of musicians that you've never heard of. I think we must have at least 200 licenses for musicians to use it in their own tracks, which is great.
Yeah.
But modern times too. If you look at the theme of modern times, unemployment, homelessness, living on the streets, unfortunately, all that is still here too, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that I've said this a number of times, but I think that's important, that the Chaplin Festival is not just a comedy film festival, it's the social commentary side as well, which was a huge part of what Chaplin was and his work. So it's amazing from that perspective. I have here, I'm on notes to ask you about Einstein's letter. Was there a letter from Einstein or something?
Letter from Einstein. They met.
Did they?
Do we have a letter from Einstein? I can't remember. I think we may have a letter from Einstein saying, thank you for inviting me to the projection of something, but I can't come.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it was about a party. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think I heard this a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. We have letters from Einstein. Imagine that. We have, but you know, he knew everybody, because when in those days things were so much more, I suppose, fun. I mean, if you went, it's the days. Don't forget, the 20s and the 30s are the days when rich people didn't work and travelled. You know, like they used to go on to Italy and, you know, the Grand Tour, etc. And so if they went to Hollywood, or if famous people went to Hollywood, stars who were there for their own concert tours or ballet tours or book tours or whatever, they would go and visit Douglas Fairbanks, Charlie Chaplin. You just could.
Yeah.
You know, your publicist would phone up and say, oh, Lord so-and-so is here. He wants to come to the studios. And I expect you'd think, oh, for heaven's sake, really? We don't need to meet Lord so-and-so. Who is he anyway? But I mean, so there were regularly people visited the Chaplin studios. And then there were people that Chaplin himself really wanted to meet, like Einstein, and H.G. Wells, and sort of relationships that he would cultivate because of the fascination of the other person.
The love affair with Chaplin, it's global. It goes all over the world. So you're dealing globally. It's amazing to think, you know, you could be in some parts of China and there's a massive fan base there as well. He's universally loved, isn't he?
He is. I'm afraid we don't know much about what goes on in China because, you know, you can't Google anything and you can't. So we've no idea. There's a fan club in Japan run by Ono Hiroyuki, who's a great expert Chaplin fan. Has he been to Waterville? I can't remember if he's been to Waterville.
I don't know, to be honest.
So they have quite a few members. China, I know there are lots of fans. We have 1.7 followers of our Facebook page, 1.7 million followers on our Facebook page, and the majority of them are from Pakistan and India.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
And there's more men. There's like 60% men.
Yeah.
So men between 18 and 35. I don't know. Perhaps they're on internet much more, or maybe they really. I mean, who knows? I mean, I know he's very, very popular in India. That's for sure. And there are lots of imitators, and he also kind of. They have a tradition of like, for example, Ray's films were always paying homage to Chaplin. I mean, they have a tradition of paying homage to Chaplin in their cinema. So it comes from.
Of course, you know, most of the films were non-verbal, so there's no need to translate them or anything like that. So that's what I suppose the global appeal as well. And the people you've met then, Kate, like, you know, David Robinson was here, the Chaplin's biographer. You must have met some amazing people that are really passionate about Chaplin through the years.
I've met a very great combination of people who know so much because they've researched so much. Like David Robinson is amazing. What I love about David is that he wrote this book a long time ago. He was the first historian journalists to have access to the archives, which were at the Manoir de Bon in the Chaplin family house, and they were just in parcels as they'd come from the studios. and nobody'd really looked at them. And he was the first person to actually open these parcels and find all these treasures. It must have been extraordinary. So his book really is the definitive one. It was kind of the first one with access to the archives, and you didn't really need to write any more after that. But sometimes if you'll be talking to David and you'll say, oh yeah, but what about that blah, blah, blah? And he'll say, oh, I didn't know that. Where did you find that out? And I said, in your book. So, but he's at the moment, he's just finished a book actually for the Bologna Cinematheque on Chaplin's last project, The Freak, which is the story of a girl. He wrote it with Victoria Chaplin in mind. It's the story of a girl who's born. I'm not sure if she's born with wings or if they grow later, and she is sort of stolen by charlatans who want to exploit her in a circus, and then also a scientific guy who wants to research her, and it all ends very badly, unfortunately, because she can't just live. She's a freak. Mm-hmm. It's a very beautiful story, and David has just finished a book about that, which I hope will be published maybe this year or next year. Yeah. He never stops.
Yeah, he never stops.
To answer your question, there are amazing people in America who know things. There are people, there's a guy, did Serge Bromberg ever come to Waterville? He has been restoring and collecting films for, 40 years. People know different things about different areas. And what I love about my job is when someone comes and has a new project, I just say, oh, well, you need to talk to this person. I just put people in touch with each other, and that's really good fun.
Yeah, you're facilitating. I'm just looking at the image behind you. What is that? It's obviously Chaplin, but is it
that one there?
Yeah.
That is a Cuban. It's a copy, actually. It's not an original, unfortunately. There was a series of amazing posters by a famous artist whose name now escapes me, Cuban poster artist, and that is one of the posters. Yeah. I'm not sitting in the best place. If I were in my office where I don't have a camera on my telephone, on my computer, which is next door, there are lots of things.
Yeah.
Sorry. Maybe if I turn, you can see that we do have a lot of things. I mean, this wall, for example, is all just things I've cut out of, printed out of people dressed as Chaplin, from Michael Jackson to Brigitte Bardot to friends. Who happened to have said, oh, but look, I dressed as Charlie Chaplin when I was little. So that's fun. And we've got some good posters up there. Basically, the walls are all just covered in stuff.
Look, you can see that's great to get that kind of a look at what you have there. I'm just thinking, was there anything in the archive that has never been released? You mentioned like the hidden, the kind of documents from the Great Dictator, or script writing that wasn't put in the film. Is there anything like a work that he hasn't released that you have, or anything like that?
Well, The Freak was never made, and so the script has never been published, which it will be in this new book. There are lots of storylines, that he wrote kind of with story ideas, lots and lots of things that haven't been printed yet, that haven't been released. It's kind of difficult though, if you're the children of someone who was such an amazing artist and who was such a perfectionist that he went on and on and on until each work was exactly how he wanted it. So then you're responsible for the things that he left but that he didn't finish. You kind of think, well, he probably wouldn't have wanted people to see them because they're not as perfect as he would have wanted. So you're sort of torn between people like me saying, oh, come on, it would be so great if we could publish these things, and the family saying, well, maybe they're not good enough. Maybe he wouldn't want people to read them. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it is a real one, because you even see, I suppose, famous singers when they've passed on and they've albums that are released, and you're thinking, would they have liked that? Because they were perfectionists. Yeah, so that's a difficult one to kind of struggle with. Just in relation to Chaplin himself, do you think Chaplin was a genius?
I don't know. I mean, who am I to say? Who am I to say who is a genius?
But you're immersed in his work now all the time.
I think he He's amazing. I've been working here a long time and I'm not bored. I still find these incredible things that interest me, and I'm always in awe of the way he handled things. But was that him, or was it that just there's my dog, was he, or was it him who decided to do that, or did he just manage to surround himself with the right people so that they made sure that this was copyrighted and this was done like this, and that you had a contract and that you kept this, and I think he was an artistic genius, and it seems that he was a business genius, but I'm not sure. I have no idea whether that was him or he was just genius enough to have the right lawyers and the right managers and things.
Yeah, because even from the artistic side, as a businessman, he created a business empire back in the 20s, and United Artists and all that. It was amazing. Yeah. I'm laughing here to myself at your dog, because I'm saying the Chaplin spirit is alive there. He gave us a few somersaults when he came in, and now he's playing dead on the carpet. Kate, before I leave you go, the people say find a day or find a job you love and you won't work a day in your life. Is that the way it is for you? That amazes me to say, you've been working a good few years now in the Chaplin office, that you never get bored. That's amazing.
I never get bored with
the work.
archives and Chaplin. Yeah. I never get bored of Chaplin. Obviously, daily, it's routine, it's answering emails, it's the same sort of contracts. It's, yes, you may reproduce this photograph. I'm not saying it's, it's definitely, my job is not boring, but it can be monotonous. Mm-hmm. But there are always things, like next year is the 100th anniversary of the kid.
Oh, really?
It's 100 years old. It is still beautiful. It's still moving. I hope we're going to have quite a lot of things, a lot of screenings of it in different places. And I'm trying to think of ways to get that to happen with our distributors. I hope that you'll be able to show it next year. I hope people will be able to go to your. Are you entirely online then this year?
Just this year, yeah. That's the way in Kerry here. Most of the festivals, they're either not going ahead or there's a few of them online. That's just the way it is, yeah. So hopefully, but again, it's like Chaplin is a global icon, and again, this gets lets people know that we have this festival going on here in Waterville to a global audience, which is great.
No, it's great. It's great. I think it's wonderful that you're still going, that it's kind of a comedy, and that people still submit their films and things. And so next year, the kid, maybe you could do something, as you were saying earlier, that still the films are still very up to date and still have issues, social issues. The kid really does, and maybe you could ask people to submit films inspired by that, by orphans or with kids growing up with no parents, or just single parent families, exactly what it is for a while.
Chaplin's work, it doesn't age, does it? I know we mentioned The Great Dictator is so relevant, but I remember the first year that I was involved in the festival and we were showing his films to kids and to adults alike, but they were falling around laughing, and it could have been 100 years ago. It was the same reaction. It's timeless. No,
it's great. That's the wonderful thing. That's to me the mystery of Chaplin. People often say, why do his films still work today? And I don't know. If you go back to the 20s or the teens and you see who else was really, really successful. Even Sidney Chaplin, his brother, was an incredibly successful actor between sort of 1918 and 23. He had very, very successful films. And you watch them now and they're not funny at all to us. Yeah. He does amazing things. He's very good at sort of twisting himself round and does all these sort of tricks of kind of Buster Keaton-y sort of body things. And the stories are quite interesting. There's one called Submarine Pirate, which is really amazing because he's on a submarine in the middle of the sea and standing up and the submarine's going down, and it's a real submarine. So there's some fun things in them. But even Douglas Fairbanks, who was huge, who was the, heartthrob of millions, his films haven't really lasted, and Chaplin's have. I think it's because of the emotion and the fact that he dealt with issues that we're unfortunately still dealing with today.
Yeah, The Kid is a very emotional film for such a funny film at times, but
Yeah.
it's very emotional, isn't it?
It's The Kid is absolutely fantastic film. I think. I mean, 100 years is just amazing. And what isn't is what I find it very difficult. I've seen it with, it's in public domain in the States now, and so they sometimes accompany it with different music. And Chaplin wrote the music to The Kid in 1972, and at the time he said The Kid was never really finished before now. I mean, obviously that was a publicity statement for the re-release of the film, but it's kind of true because his score adds enormously to the emotion of the scenes, especially when Jackie Coogan's in the truck going, "I want my daddy, I want my daddy," and the orchestra is just swelling up like that. I mean, you can't not cry, and without the music, it doesn't happen in the same way. So his addition of the score to that in the 70s was a huge extra.
Last question before we start crying. If you were to choose one film to recommend of Chaplin's, what would it be? I know he was a composer and he was everything else, but if you had one film to choose, which one would you recommend to someone?
I think if you don't know Chaplin, I think if you want to introduce Chaplin to a smaller child, like say from sort of 4 to 10, you should start with The Circus. The Circus is just hilarious. I mean, you've seen it. We had it in Waterville and the Big Top, didn't we? And
that was the first one, yeah.
It's just so, there's so many funny things in it, and children love it. They, to begin with, they think black and white, silent, don't want to watch it, but then they just fall in love with this character, and they fall in love with all the animals and the monkeys and the circus is fantastic. If you're an adult and you want to discover Chaplin, I would say City Lights, because City Lights has everything. It's just a perfect whole and perfect emotion, comedy, and the score. That was the first score he wrote. It was the first film that came out, was released with music composed by Chaplin, and it's just a perfect whole and still works today. And yet there are places where audiences are kind of bent double with laughter, like there's a boxing scene where he just is, and so The Circus for younger kids and City Lights for grown-ups.
Fantastic. Well, Kate, you've been very generous with your time. Thanks a million for being involved in this wonderful event, and we look forward to having you here in person in the not too distant future when all this is over.
Come back, it'll be really good fun.
Brilliant. Well, Kate Guyonvarch, Director of the Chaplin Office, thanks a million for joining us for this special event.
Thank you, Joe. It was good fun.
That's it for this event. Stay tuned, there's going to be lots more. Remember, if you want to come to Waterville, visit waterville.ie. And if you want to find out more about the Charlie Chaplin Comedy Film Festival, Chaplin Film Festival is online. You can Google it. It's all there. We'll have more after this. Well, we hope you enjoyed our special online event with various Chaplin enthusiasts and experts. That's it. You'll be announcing the winners over the coming days and over the coming time period, which is great that you're able to keep the film festival going. But like we said, James, we're looking forward to next year already.
Yeah, absolutely. And next year will be big. It's chaplinfilmfestival.com if you want to visit the website. Have a look at the social media pages on Instagram and Facebook to keep an eye on what we're going to be doing for next year.
Yeah, because you carry out lots of things during the year as well, so it's important to stay tuned for that. And like I said, if you're interested in visiting Waterville, check out visitwaterville.ie. We're here in the southwest coast of Ireland, a beautiful spot with lots for everyone to do, for the family, young and old, great seafood, great outdoor activities, great scenery, great golf, great fishing, great place to be. Like I said, no wonder Charlie Chaplin chose it as a place to visit for a decade with his family. It's a connection we're very proud of, with Charlie Chaplin's statue just behind us here alongside our famous GA legend Miko Dwyer. That's it. I suppose all we can do now is just smile, James, is it?
That's it, yeah. And we'll see you next year.
Very good.